The movie begins by showing the year 1976 when AVL agents pursued Belle Bottom, a member of the infamous Vicious Six, for stealing a map of the Zodiac of antiquity. Belle successfully evades the agents and meets her fellow villains, including Stronghold, Nunchuck, Svengeance, Jean-Claude, and Wild Knuckles, at the Vicious Six headquarters. Belle hands over the map to Wild, who opens it and plans to travel to Beijing at night. The following day, Wild arrives in China, where he discovers the location of the Zodiac Stone with the help of the map. Despite slipping and stumbling, Wild retrieves the stone and is suddenly attacked by guards. With his impressive skills, Wild defeats the guards and takes the Zodiac Stone. However, soon after taking the stone, a green light enters the Zodiac, and Wild is met with more guards preparing to chase him. In a desperate attempt to save himself, Wild contacts his friends to help him, but to his surprise, Belle betrays him and instructs her friends to let Wild fall after he hands over the Zodiac Stone. The scene shifts to a school where a young Gru attends class when asked about his aspirations. Gru boldly declares that he wants to be a supervillain. After school, Gru is picked up by his companions, Kevin, Bob, and Stuart, and they embark on a spree of mischievous activities, such as causing a disturbance at the cinema and shooting cheese at people waiting in line for ice cream. Upon arriving home, Gru discovers an invitation to interview for the Vicious Six, who are seeking a replacement for their recently departed member Wild. Belle explains in the message that Gru is a potential candidate for the position and warns him that the message will explode. However, Gru and the minions fail to leave the car, immediately leading to a small explosion in the vehicle. Later on, Gru meets with his mother to ask for food, but as it's not yet ready, he heads to his secret base to gather the minions and share the news of his interview with the Vicious Six. The minions are elated to hear this. In his room adorned with Vicious Six posters, Gru lays down to sleep, dreaming of joining the infamous group. However, Kevin and the other minions soon join him, leaving Gru with little space in his own bed. Meanwhile, a news program on the Villains TV reports on the Vicious Six's plan and to harness the power of the Zodiac Stone during the Chinese New Year and defeat the AVL, making them the most powerful villains on Earth. Wild, who had been betrayed by his teammates, watches the news with evident displeasure. His men soon arrive, asking for payment. Wild refuses and engages in a fight with them. He quickly overpowers them all. The morning of Gru's big interview with the Vicious Six had finally arrived, and he was eager to impress as he was getting dressed. His loyal minions waited for him outside, hoping to join him on his adventure. However, Gru refused to let them come along, and so they followed him in secret. When Gru arrived at the Vicious Six headquarters, he nervously mentioned the secret code that Belle had given him to a guard named Dr. Nefario. The guard listened intently, and then took Gru to a room where he handed him a cassette tape. While Gru played the tape, his minions watched from outside the window, eager to know what was happening. As Gru listened to the tape, Nefario instructed him to play it backward. Nefario decided to give him a tool that he had created for free. Upon arrival at the Vicious Six headquarters, Gru is excited about his interview to become a supervillain. He was met with immediate ridicule and insults from the other candidates, including Belle, who suggested that Gru should go back to school. This only fueled Gru his determination to prove himself. During the interview, Gru attempted to steal the Zodiac Stone to demonstrate his villainous potential. His theft was noticed by the Belle, who immediately ordered Stronghold to destroy the bridge. Despite Gru managed to cross the destroyed bridge and make it upstairs to encounter Nefario. Nefario recognized Gru's potential and allowed him to leave with the Zodiac Stone. As Gru made his way out of the building, he was spotted by Wild, who was amazed that a child could pull off such a daring heist. After Gru got to where his bike was parked, he sees the minions and asks them to get ready to leave. Svengeance chases after Gru, and during the chase, Gru's bike slips and Otto falls. While holding the Zodiac Stone, Gru asks Otto to take the stone to headquarters, while he and the others distract the Vicious Six members. Gru manages to defeat Stronghold, Nunchuck, and Jean-Claude all at once. While Belle arrives and hooks her chain to Gru's bike, Gru ignites the rocket on the bike and escapes from the Vicious Six. After some time passes, Gru becomes anxious because Otto has not returned with the Zodiac Stone. He tells the minions that he will return the stone to Belle once she recognizes his power, and recruits him to be a member of Vicious Six. Eventually, Otto returns with an ordinary stone instead of the Zodiac. Gru becomes upset and fires the minions determined to find the Zodiac Stone on his own. As Gru packs his things to leave, he is suddenly kidnapped by Wild. One of the minions tries to chase after Wild's car, but his efforts are not successful. The next day, after Wild's mission, Gru meets with him and is shocked to hear that Wild has been killed while taking the Zodiac Stone. Gru, who had lost the Zodiac Stone, shows the displayed stone from Otto. Feeling played, Wild orders his men to throw Gru off his house, but Gru begs to call his house for first. Once connected, Kevin receives the call, and Wild tells him that he is waiting for the Zodiac sign at his home in San Francisco. If they don't carry the Zodiac sign within 2 days, Gru will die a terrible death. panic that Gru life is at stake. Kevin orders the other minions to interrogate Otto for information on the man who had traded the Zodiac Stone. After being threatened, Otto finally remembers and mentions the boy's characteristics. The minions then decide to meet the boy who lived near Gru's house. When they get to the front of the house, Kevin, Stuart, and Bob meet the boy, while Otto is ordered to stay in front of the house. Suddenly, the garage of the house opens, and Otto accidentally notices the biker. The uncle of the boy who took the Zodiac Stone is about to leave while wearing the Zodiac Stone. Otto immediately chases the biker using a mini bicycle, afraid of losing track. Kevin and his friends had failed to obtain the Zodiac Stone to save Gru, and were in a hurry to reach San Francisco. They hopped on a bus with the San Francisco sign and took off without any plan or preparation. Meanwhile, Vicious Six, led by Belle, was gearing up to attack Gru House. When Kevin and his friends reached the airport, they found out that they couldn't fly to San Francisco without proper documentation. They observed how easily the pilots and flight attendants could enter and decided to disguise themselves as pilots and a flight attendant to get on board. Kevin tried to learn the plane's flight system, while Stuart played with the microphone in the control room, and Bob served the passengers in disguise. Kevin's adherence to the guidebook led to a heated argument between him and Stuart, who eventually pressed all the buttons in the cockpit to take off abnormally. After a lot of struggles, Kevin took over and stabilized the flight. On the flight, Stuart left the cockpit feeling nauseous, while Kevin activated the autopilot and went to sleep. Bob, on the other hand, was comforting a crying baby passenger as they approached the San Francisco airport. Alarm sounded, and Kevin woke up to turn off the autopilot and land the plane safely. Gru finds himself captive in a dimly lit room belonging to Wild, with ropes tightly bound around his arms. Wild explains that unless the Zodiac Stone is delivered within 48 hours, Gru will meet a gruesome fate. Meanwhile, Otto continues to chase the biker, unaware of the distance. He is covered through several cities. Kevin and his team have finally tracked down Wild's hideout. However, they have a long way to go before they can reach it. Along the way, Bob falls and gets stuck in a carriage. Kevin and Stuart, not wanting to leave Bob behind, jump on the carriage to join him. When they finally reach the destination, they come face to face with many of Wild's henchmen who are guarding the entrance. Kevin suggests going undercover, but their disguises fail, and they are chased until they end up cornered in the Chinatown area when the guards beat the three minions. Master Chow, a former kung fu teacher, witnesses the entire scene from her acupuncture clinic. She can't bear to see a young child beaten up and decides to intervene. Chow unleashes her martial arts skills and single-handedly takes down all of Wild's guards with the minions battered and bruised. Kevin and his team are desperate for a way to save Gru. They enter Chow's acupuncture clinic and beg her to teach them kung fu so they can rescue Gru. Chow initially refuses, but after seeing Bob's pitiful face, she finally agrees to train them. The scene turns to Gru's house, where the minions are ordered by Gru's mother Marlena to sell kitchen utensils. However, their peaceful day is suddenly interrupted by the arrival of the Vicious Six, who attacked Gru's house in an attempt to find him. One of the minions is threatened by Belle to reveal Gru's whereabouts. The minion reveals that Gru has been kidnapped by Wild, which surprises the Vicious Six team. As they thought Wild was dead, they immediately head to San Francisco to meet Wild. Meanwhile, Kevin and the other minions are seen practicing with Master Chow, a former kung fu teacher. They start with basic exercises like practicing against a doll and destroying wood. However, Stuart and Kevin are not serious about practicing, which results in Chow hitting them both. At Wild's house, his men ask to retire after being beaten by Chow. Feeling lonely, Wild decides to free Gru, saying that he has great potential to become a supervillain. At the same time, Otto, who had been chasing the rider, finally gets his hands on the Zodiac Stone. The rider even gives Otto a ride to San Francisco. In the meantime, Gru is trying to clean his pool, which is full of crocodiles. He is confused about how to do it, and asks Wild to show him. Wild jumps into the pool and is quickly attacked by the crocodiles, but Gru saves him. Wild acknowledges Gru's bravery and agrees to teach him how to become a supervillain. In the middle of the forest, Kevin and his two colleagues train with Chow, who teaches them internal power techniques. Chow practices the technique with Stuart, who bounces far through several trees. The minions train hard day after day until Chow declares that they are ready to save Gru. Gru and Wild then team up to rob the Bank of Evil, which is oddly located in a public toilet. Inside, they encounter Mr. Perkins, and to distract him, Wild feigns illness, while Gru heads upstairs to the safe. But the safe requires a key that is in Perkins' back pocket. With the help of a tool provided by Nefario, Gru successfully retrieves the key just in time to stop Perkins from using a heartburn device on Wild. Gru reveals that his grandfather is safe and decides to leave the bank. Outside, he reveals a Wild that he has managed to steal the Mona Lisa, which makes Wild happy. Meanwhile, Kevin and the other minions arrive at Wild's house to help Gru, but they find it empty. Belle and her crew also arrive, ransacking the place when they find no one there. Kevin, realizing that the Vicious Six might know Gru's whereabouts, decides to follow Belle and her team. Otto arrives in San Francisco and lands in Chinatown before saying goodbye to the rider. After returning home, Gru and Wild are devastated to find that their house has been destroyed by Vicious Six, the team that Wild had formed himself. Although Wild had taught them how to be supervillains, they had now turned against him and destroyed his home. Wild is furious with Vicious Six, but Gru is even more enraged and declares that he will face them. However, Wild disagrees and instead expels Gru. From his team feeling disappointed and alone, Gru decides to board a train to clear his head. To his surprise, he runs into Otto on the train, who gives him the Zodiac Stone that he had obtained. But their peaceful journey is cut short when the members of Vicious Six suddenly appear and capture Gru to get their hands on the stone, while Otto decides to hide. Meanwhile, the AVL agents have surrounded the location and are waiting to take action. As the Chinese New Year's Eve begins, Belle decides to make her move and challenge all the AVL agents with the Zodiac Stone she holds. The stone's power transforms Belle and her team member into powerful monsters who easily defeat the AVL agents. Meanwhile, Gru is captured and tied up in a giant clock, while Kevin and the others are turned into helpless animals. In the midst of this chaos, Wild unexpectedly appears, seeking revenge on the Vicious Six and saving his disciple Gru. The minions join Wild in the fight, and with their help, Kevin and the others are unleash their hidden powers and fight back against the monsters. Just as the battle seems to be turning in their favor, Gru is still trapped in the giant clock, struggling to break free. But Otto arrives to save him, and they fight together to free Gru from his bomb. At the same time, Belle unleashes a powerful fire attack on Wild, leaving him helpless on the ground with Gru in line for her wrath. Kevin and his friends tap into their inner power and rush to protect him. As they fight, Gru manages to grab hold of the Zodiac Stone, causing Belle and her team member to shrink down into tiny animals, with the Vicious Six defeated and captured. Wild is rushed to the hospital to receive medical attention for his injuries. Despite the destruction caused by the minions, Gru decides not to fire them and instead offers them a heartfelt apology for his actions. As the dust settles, AVL leader arrives on the scene and questions whether Wild should be imprisoned for his involvement with the Vicious Six. A few days after the battle with Vicious Six, Gru and the minions are gathered to mourn the loss of Wild. While paying their respects, Gru sees Wild hiding behind a tree, hinting that he faked his death to evade punishment and erase his criminal record with the AVL. Gru and Wild then walk away from the funeral, leaving the minions behind. Later, Gru decides to recruit Nefario as his evil scientist to assist with his evil plans. Initially reluctant, Nefario rejects the offer. After some persuasion from Gru and the minions, Nefario agrees to join the team. They then leave on a plane that Nefario has built, and the movie ends. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can get more video like this.